The rate for overtime eligibility is changing, and it just may have a huge impact on your team and your budget. Hi entrepreneurs, I'm Vicky Brown, and you're in the right place if you want to engage your team, boost your business, and grow your leadership muscle. Okay, I won't waste any time, let's just jump right in. In last week's episode, we covered what is and what isn't an overtime eligible position, and the fact that the Department of Labor has upgraded the minimum salary you can pay an exempt employee. Well, in this week's episode, we're going to talk about the steps you need to take to navigate these changes. All right, to recap, the Department of Labor is changing the minimum wage for exempt level employees, meaning those not eligible for overtime. It used to be $684 per week, but effective July 1st, 2024, it's moving to $844 per week. And that applies to the executive, administrative, and professional categories. And while outside sales is remaining the same, the highly compensated categories minimum, well, that amount is changing as well. You see, it used to be that people making $107,432 per year were considered highly compensated and so exempt. But now, you have to make at least $132,964 a year to sit in that highly compensated category. So if you make less than that amount, the only way you would be considered exempt from overtime is if you qualify under one of the other categories. Now, if this all sounds Greek to you, take a look at last week's episode where I break everything down for each category. Okay, back to the navigation. First, take a look at your state and other local laws. Many states have their own categories and wage levels. And in fact, mine, California, has wage levels higher than the DOL's. So we would have to comply with California's numbers. That's why before you go making any salary or other adjustments, it's important to know what's up with your local laws first. Then you can tackle the federal requirements. Next, you'll need to do an analysis of where you are as a company. Get a report on each person and include date of hire, job title, salary, current overtime category, meaning exempt or non-exempt, etc. The more information, the better, because you're probably going to have to make some challenging decisions around compensation. And knowing how long someone has been with the company and what their title is, well, that's going to be very helpful. And you also need to know what's going on across the whole organization. For instance, if you have 3 customer service reps, one at $40,000 per year, one at $55,000, and one at $85,000, well, you can't just make the person at $40,000 non-exempt and leave the other 2 as exempt if they're all doing the same job. It won't pass the sniff test with an auditor. So again, you need all the information so you know if there might be any unintended consequences to your decisions. In fact, this is an excellent time to look at all the classifications across your organization. Who is exempt? Do they meet the duties test? And if so, which one? Write all that down and put it in your compensation folder, because one day you'll need to know why you did what you did. Now, once you've done all that and you've identified where the gaps are, now it's time to fix things. And before you decide that you're just going to increase everyone so that they're above the threshold, here are some questions that you need to ask yourself. Does the job pass the duties test? Because if not, game over. They have to pass both the duties and the wage test to be considered exempt. Are you paying them on a salary basis? So if your argument is that they're exempt, then you can't turn around and start docking their pay for 1 and 2 hour absences. Now, that's just an example. The rules around docking the pay for exempt employees, they're significantly more complex. What will making the job exempt mean to the rest of the company? As I said earlier, do you have other people in the same job? Are they in the same category? What impact might all this have on the budget? And what about benefits that may be tied to the salary level? You see, when you increase someone's salary, that might mean their life insurance amount is increased, because that's usually tied to the employee's wages. And if you have a matching retirement plan, an increase will mean their contribution and your matching amount will increase. Now, on the other side, what if you decide to just make them all non-exempt or overtime eligible? Well, that brings along a different set of questions. You should look at the time that they actually work so you have some measure of clarity over the amount of overtime that they might incur. Also, consider performance increases and bonuses if they apply. Most bonuses are going to trigger a recalculation of overtime for non-exempt people. And from an administrative standpoint, they'll have to start clocking in and out. So you'll have to have a timekeeping system ready to go. And you'll probably, depending on your state, have to start tracking meal periods as well. Do you have different benefits for exempt and non-exempt employees? The one I see most often is vacation. It's accrued at one rate for overtime eligible employees and another rate for exempt level employees. And then there's the elephant in the room. How will your team take it if their job is exempt one day and they have to start clocking in and out the next? So many people see this as some sort of demotion, but in fact, it gives the employee the opportunity to earn more since they're going to be compensated for each hour they work, and often at a premium rate. And by the way, that reminds me, when you move someone from exempt to non-exempt, well, that's no time to decide that you'll get a little money back in the budget by lowballing their hourly rate. Because believe me, they will most certainly notice, and it'll cause a lot more trouble than you want. When you do the conversion, consider all the compensation they had before. If they had special perks, try to factor that in. And if you factor in overtime that they may work, then prohibit all overtime, well, you've just reduced their rate from what it was. So don't do that. And hey, registered nurses are non-exempt. So it doesn't have anything to do with being a less than employee, because we all know registered nurses aren't less than anybody. And thank goodness for them. But you'll still have to carefully craft your communication plan. Be prepared to answer each individual's questions. What does it mean for their pay? How will they clock in and out? What are the rules? What happens to their bonus? In fact, I think it's actually best if you do a little memo or FAQ for each person with a cover outlining their specific numbers so that they can have something in their hand in writing that they can refer back to when they get confused after you've discussed everything. Listen, I know compensation is a touchy subject, but don't go it alone. Enlist the help of your managers and department heads, particularly on the duties evaluation piece. They can help give spot-on information around what that person is actually doing every day. And they may have insight on who will take it well and who won't. Because you have to keep in mind, this isn't the last time this is going to happen. The ranges are scheduled to be updated every 3 years, beginning in 2027. So remember that as you go through future workforce planning. That's a fancy HR way of saying who you'll need in the future and what you'll need done. And also remember it as you're looking at your budget. I'll put a link to a quick at-a-glance guide from the DOL in the description. If you found this information helpful, please subscribe and share. And remember, your inspired leadership is the secret sauce to having a high-performance team and a wildly successful business you'll love. I'll see you next time on Leader's Journey.